In the second hour, let's say that I got a little mess here. Okay, in the second hour that they were at Sharp Jamboree Park, I'm going to add country in here. I left it out because this is actually a reference to something else. But I'm going to put it back in because it just makes more sense. In the second hour, they were at Sharp Jamboree Park. Molly took his hand, and for Brandon, everything in the world, everything in the universe turned completely right and completely wrong at the same time. She had canceled on him twice, so when she finally said yes, and they finally made it to the amusement park, Brandon was all nerves. He knew he was boring. That's not to say he had no friends, no interest, or wasn't funny. He had and was all those things under the right conditions. But next to Molly, he couldn't find the words anymore. He wasn't going to talk to her about Dungeons and Dragons. He wasn't going to tell her about his latest creations in Minecraft. They had already discussed their favorite YouTube channels, and that was in the first 15 minutes of their date. Even though she was holding his hand, right? And he'd managed not to fart for the entire date. He needed to stop being boring, or this would be their last date. He felt that truth in his soul. As darkness fell over the ocean, the pastels sank into deep blues and purples. The lights in the park were not neon, but they shined with super bright insanity. Lots of voices overlapped into noise. Everyone else seemed to be able to talk about something. Then the soundtrack of amusement parks played out all around them. Canned music, the passing roars of wheels on wooden tracks with a Doppler of screams, and then they were gone again under the closing rings of bells and laughter. Ask her some more questions, Brandon thought. I'm going to italicize his thoughts here. He could just riff off her answers. As long as he didn't make it sound weird and stupid, it would be fine. "What's your favorite animal?" he blurted out. Okay, it was too late. He had said the dumbest grade school thing he could have pulled out, an unforced error if there ever was one. Just as well, he had shot way above his range with Molly. She was a beautiful junior and he was a small for his age sophomore. They were friends outside of school, and that gave him some advantage in theory, but not enough to justify asking what her favorite animal was, like she was just your kid cousin instead of a goddess on earth. She shouted with a shocking level of enthusiasm, "Butterflies!" "Really?" Brandon said. He could tell his hand was getting sweaty in hers. This was bad. "I mean, that's cool. Butterflies are cool." Damn, he thought. All right, let me italicize his thoughts again. She was trying to give him an assist, and he was determined to bat the ball away anyhow. She pointed above their heads. Okay. Let's say he didn't know a lot about sports. All right. She pointed above their heads and said, "No, look, butterflies. Butterflies at night." Brandon looked up into the dancing splotches of light left over in his vision from staring into all the brightness of the park. Then he realized the pink splotches fluttering around were real. As the flock of butterflies, did you call them a flock? Okay, this was something I wanted to work on. Yeah, okay. All right. Did you call them a flock? Brandon didn't think so, but he had been dumb. He had been dumb enough already, so there was no way in hell he was going to ask. "Are they pink?" She took a few steps forward and pulled him along with her. They were pink, and there were a lot of them. So many danced around and over them that he thought they were fake, maybe paper and wind-ups the park released as a show. As the insects descended to eye level, he saw they were very much alive and very pink. Not moths either. He didn't think so anyway. Of course, he didn't know the difference really. They were very, very pink. "Are those really butterflies?" he asked, no matter how stupid the question might be. "I think so." Others around the park stopped and stared as well. Some of the gawkers were really far down the boardwalk. How wide did this infestation go? Let's say a few jumped up and tried to catch them. How wide did this infestation go? I can't believe it. An old man turned in circles a few feet away from them. Molly laughed. Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it? Brandon sighed. Even the old man had better conversation game than him. Beautiful, sure, he said, still butting in on Brandon's date, but super rare, so rare that these should be extinct. Thought to be so for generations now. Brandon tilted his head, let's say. Might as well have him tilt something since I got that in there. Brandon tilted his head as one almost landed on his nose. The eyes had spots of bright green, but also white and black patterns as well. He almost thought he saw a picture in those bulbous eyes, but that was crazy. It had black antennae and a long black piece that came down from its mouth, really long. He couldn't remember what that was called, but it was how they fed. He wanted to say tongue. He wanted to say it was a tongue, but that couldn't be right. As the bug, pardon me. As the bug decided not to land on Brandon's face, he imagined that black piece being a stinger. How unpleasant. Brandon finally contributed to this discussion. Well, there's a ton of them here now. Fine observation, young man, the old guy said. Brandon couldn't tell if that was sarcasm or not. These are definitely holly pink swallowtails. I'd bet my life on it. Seemed like an odd thing to stake your life upon. Molly said, I've never seen one before, not even in a book. Amazing, the old man said. Graphium elroseo. Some grad students are going to be super busy for a while. The holly pinks were believed to be a mutation of the purple spotted swallowtails, but I think that's comma S. I think that's bull. I believe that's hokum. Why? Molly asked. Brandon gritted his teeth. This old butterfly freak needed to move on and let Brandon and his potential girlfriend enjoy the rare butterfly show. This could be a romantic moment that marked the beginning of a great love affair if Captain Butterfly would just buzz the hell off. Captain Butterfly dove right back into the conversation. They just looked nothing alike, behaved nothing alike. People killed these things. Killed the let's have him be specific. Killed the holly pinks. Killed the holly pinks on purpose if the primary sources available are true. Even Brandon got sucked in despite his best efforts. Why would they kill the butterflies? The man shook his head but answered anyway. A legend started that the holly pinks fed on blood. Nonsense, of course, but the species was believed lost as a result. That's terrible, Molly said. At least she was still holding Brandon's hand. That was something. 2 more of the bugs fluttered by, and Brandon actually blew to get them away. They were super annoying, so maybe that had a lot to do with it. He caught that image in their eyes again. Way too much detail for insect eyes. As if on cue, Captain Butterfly said the pattern on their eyes reminded people of skulls. That didn't help the holly pink's reputation. God, after the guy said it, Brandon couldn't unsee it. Skull eyes. These weird pink butterflies. Butterflies, not butterlies. Had freaking skull eyes. The air cleared suddenly, but the holly pinks weren't gone. Most of them had lighted on the cardboard sides of carnival games or on the poles for the lights. A few kids tried to swat them, but were shouted down by others. The workers in the food areas did swat them, and a few rare holly pinks fell dead on their backs on the ground. When they did, a few more landed around the pink corpses. A kid stomped several of them in a group on the ground. Then more bugs gathered on those, and the kids stomped again. A dusty cloud of ash of a dusty cloud, comma, an ash of rose hue, comma, no, that's not working. Okay, hold on. A dusty cloud that was an ash of rose hue. Alright, I need to fix something else. This is not even an important sentence, but I'm spending some time on it. Cloud of debris. There we go. A dusty cloud of debris that was an ash of rose hue wafted into the air. There we go. Now let's move on from that unimportant detail that I spent my time on. Captain Butterfly ran to the rescue, yelling at the kid to stop. The kid's father got in the old man's face, and they screamed over the top of each other. Spit flew between their faces and caught the many lights of the park. Caught the colors of the many lights of the park. A snow cone cart was carpeted in butterflies. The worker threw his hands in frustration, but then tried again to sweep them away en masse. The dislocated holly pinks burst into the air in an impressive way. More of the creatures filled the empty place over the cart. Now the guy was cussing loud enough for the kids around him to hear. Maybe they're attracted to the sugar, Molly said. She was still holding his hand. This was awesome. Good observation, Brandon said. That's probably it. He knew it was a stupid thing to say, but it sounded okay. A cotton candy salesman cried out and swatted the butterflies over his hair as he climbed over the counter to get out of his booth. His hair shimmered with the crushed wings, and more holly pinks smothered their dead on the ground. The plastic-wrapped bundles of cotton candy started falling to the ground. Started falling to the, let's say, asphalt, pavement, because I've already said ground. The plastic rattled with the number of butterflies pouring through the tops of the cotton candy. How many butterflies would be too heavy for the holders to keep the cotton candy up? Brandon asked. Molly said, I don't know. Butterflies weigh like nothing. The bugs devoured the candy down to the center stick before their eyes. The creatures returned to flight and attacked more of the candy and food booths. That's crazy, she whispered. That's impossible, Brandon added. At least they found something interesting to talk about. Soon the food in the park had been devoured. The hot dogs rolling on the steam rack behind glass looked deflated down to their greasy skins. Are they eating meat? Brandon wondered. Okay, I need to italicize his thought there. Brandon wondered, but didn't dare say out loud. A few dead holly pinks cooked black and crisp where they had stuck to the hot dog heater. The bugs took flight again, above the crumbs and husks of other dead butterflies. Cannibals, Molly whispered. She squeezed his hand harder, but Brandon barely noticed. The butterflies flew faster in a swirling storm over everyone's head. They seemed to be quite energized. Brandon swore they looked bigger, and maybe the green of their eyes glowed, making the skull shape stand out sharp from their huge eyes. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to leave it like that. I have eyes twice, which isn't perfect, but I'm not going to try to change it. The father of the stomping child shoved the old man. Oh, I have left a lot of words out. That's what editing's for, I guess. Normally you do it off screen where nobody gets to see you. The father of the stomping child shoved the old man into the glass of the heater for the shriveled hot dog skins. There was a large pow on impact, but no one reacted. To his credit, Captain Butterfly stepped right back into the bigger and younger man's face, waving his finger. Neither noticed the butterflies they argued over. A few people started to clear out of the fairway. Molly backed up a few steps and pulled Brandon along with her. Others started to scream and swat at their arms as the fattened butterflies burst under desperate hands. More than dust was left behind now. Splatters of blood, like giant crushed mosquitoes, painted forearms and cheeks, along with sticky syrup of many different colors, probably from the previous assault on the candy. I guess they ran out of sugar, Brandon said in a dull mumble. A few holly pinks, now big enough to be hats, lighted on old Captain Butterfly and the angry father. The old man must have forgotten his point because he tried to absently swat the bugs away. The father screamed in the old man's face. That wasn't exactly new, as they'd been arguing a while, but this scream was of pain and had no words. The father's head tilted back, and his eyes rolled to the whites. The thick black probe under the butterfly of the butterfly, let's say, sitting on the man's head, pulsed as it sucked fluid out of him. Let's say the thing was stabbed into his forehead. His skin darkened and shriveled before their eyes. Molly let out a voiceless breath of shaky air. 2 more holly pinks stabbed a probe each into the whites of his eyes. Within a second, his eyes vanished into his skull, and he collapsed to the screams of his family. Butterflies of all sizes, but only one color, covered his body in a living shroud. Captain Butterfly spun around and stared wide-eyed at the kids. That look of terror also seemed to say this was not supposed to happen. Brandon agreed in principle, but he was more lost and afraid in that moment than he was contemplative. Really, he was in standing shock. The creatures fluttered around the old man's face, and he abandoned his previous convictions and tried to claw them away. They went, but took a top layer of his skin with them. As the greasy, gory mask shone crimson bright, with wild white eyes in the middle of the mess, the man's jaw unhinged, but he didn't make a sound with his lolling tongue. His hands shook as he reached for his ruined face, but stopped short of touching the raw flesh. That didn't last long, as the hungry holly pinks covered him with a mask of their growing wings. Now he screamed muffled into their bodies. Instead of falling, he ran into the hot dog glass, then a fence, then ran out of sight, with more of the deadly creatures on the wing behind him. Molly pulled Brandon's arm. When he didn't come, she jerked his arm. As he still watched the butterflies swooping around them, she slapped him hard across the cheek with her free hand. He blinked back into himself and stared into her eyes as his face reddened in the shape of her fingers. "We need to go now," she said. She said it almost as an apology. He accepted, and they ran. Butterfly wings, now as broad as the wings of hawks, let me put an "of" in there, brushed over them as they ran through the chaos. He dared to look up once as they left the last ride behind. The cars still ran over the tracks in a whoosh. People still sat harnessed into the thrilling ride. No one screamed, though, and some extra-large holly pinks held onto them, onto the riders' shapes as the ride continued. Further out over the dark ocean, he spied the silhouette of a butterfly flapping its mighty wings like a dragon. It had a small shape in its legs that Brandon refused to believe was what it exactly looked like. He refused to live in a world where such a thing was possible. "Come on," Molly said as she continued to pull him along. They left the gate. No one would be there to pick them up yet. They were old enough to drive, but neither owned a car. Molly's older sister had dropped them off and wouldn't be back for another hour and a half. That was something they could talk about. As they ran out of the expansive parking lot beyond the wash of sodium lights, they both fell to their knees. Okay. Running through the parking lot, Brandon yelled out, "Swarm." A group of butterflies is called a swarm. Molly, okay, let's spell her name right, that'd be easy. Molly didn't answer as they fled the park. Okay. All right. As they ran out of the expansive parking lot beyond the wash of sodium lights, they both fell to their knees in the grass between a sidewalk and a fence. Both kids heaved for breath. Molly even retched once, but managed to keep everything down. Brandon realized they were still holding hands. His hand cramped, but he had no desire to let go. Let's say kaleidoscope. Kaleidoscope. Molly said. Brandon was sure he misheard her. What? A group of butterflies is called a kaleidoscope. There's no way I spelled this right if I don't copy it. Alright, a group of butterflies is called a kaleidoscope, she said. Let's have him say, well, he still struggled to catch his breath. Isn't that fun? She placed her free hand, or far enough away from that we don't need to mention this, her free hand. She placed her free hand gently on his cheek where she had slapped him moments ago. I'm sorry I hit you. I was afraid, and we needed to get out of there. Thank you for not leaving me. It was horrible. I was afraid to move. Brandon's lower lip quivered, and the need to cry came over him suddenly and strong. I would never leave you back there with those things. She started to lean toward him. Time slowed down for him when he realized she was about to kiss him. His need to cry evaporated in an instant, and another imperative washed warm over him. Brandon started to close his eyes and tilt his head the way he had practiced. Something seized him from behind and pulled him backward with such force that he was sure it was her dad, ready to beat his ass for trying to kiss Molly. Her eyes opened wide and she screamed no. Molly held on and pulled with both hands as Brandon lifted off the ground. All right, we're in the home stretch here. I just got to catch all the typos. My computer sounds like it's about to take off. The thing that held him screeched in his ear. He had never heard a butterfly sound, but he knew this was a holly pink without looking. He squirmed and kicked as she pulled. When her feet left the ground, he thought she'll have to let go now, but she didn't. Brandon fell and they tumbled into the grass together. Any other day of his life, having her roll on top of him would have been his greatest moment. But behind her, all right, I need to make commas instead of periods. But behind her, the long black mouth of the monster stabbed toward her back, and its massive skull-painted eyes filled the world. Okay. He rolled them both away, and the butterfly monster stabbed into the grass. It struggled to pull loose, and then came at them again. They dodged together, and its black feeding weapon punched through a section of chain link fence over wooden slats. Over a, let's say, a second wooden slat fence. The bug struggled with the racket of shaking chain link and grinding wood. It screeched like a B-movie monster and beat the ground with its great wings, trying to free itself. I'm going to copy another word here. Proboscis. Proboscis. That was the word for its black feeder probe thing. Brandon knew he knew it. All right. Proboscis. That was the word for its black feeder probe thing. Brandon knew he knew it. Without a word, Molly and Brandon fled into the night, hand in hand.